Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So it's not just Flint, Michigan, that has lead in its water. Apparently Chicago also has lead. It's contaminated all over the place in Chicago, at least the report is saying. Apparently Chicago started looking into this problem, and then when they realized how bad the problem was, buried the fact that the problem existed. What is the point of our governments? Like, what is the point of local, state, federal government if it's not to make sure that shit like this doesn't take place? And the idea that this is taking place in a nation as wealthy as this is horrific. It's utterly horrific. I think of the amount of money that is flowing through the coffers of these countries. I think of the amount of money that we're giving to corporations to set up shop in our districts, in our areas. And you're telling me that your state, your city, knows that there's lead throughout the facilities, but because it doesn't necessarily want to pay to get rid of it, it buries the report. Perfectly okay with the human costs of human beings drinking lead and the issues that are associated with those human beings drinking that lead. Imagine if it was your kid drinking that shit, and you're having issues with your kid's behavior. You don't quite understand why your kid is doing horrible in school, why your kid is slightly off. And then you find out after years, where it's too late that your kid has been consuming lead because the city didn't want to pay to get it fixed. It is your job to pay to get those things fixed. What are you in those offices for if it's not to make sure those things are fixed and that kids are not drinking lead? Let's put that at a low bar. Make sure people in our particular city are not drinking lead, and we find out that that's an issue, to actually fix the issue. You guys should be ashamed of yourselves. Absolutely ashamed of yourselves. There is not a situation where people with the technological means to make sure that people have clean water and safe, nutritious foods, that they are making a choice based on a cost-benefit analysis to not do so. Meaning, in that cost-benefit analysis, human beings matter less. Your kid drinking that water matters less. There's some official somewhere that says, I don't want to pay for that, so let's just bury that report and let's just deal with the human costs later. That's assuming how later that is. Maybe I'm out of office at that time. I just don't want to deal with it. Let's take a look at the report. This is Vice News. This shouldn't happen. I'm not going to scream. Chicago's drinking water is full of lead, report says. Toxic lead has been seeping in Chicago's drinking water, and the city is dragging its feet to fix the problem, according to an analysis published Thursday by the Chicago Tribune. Lead was found in 70% of the 2,797 homes that the Tribune sampled across the city since January of 2016, and 3 in 10 of those had lead concentrations higher than the 5 parts per billion, the Food and Drug Administration's upper limit for lead in bottled water. Since the lead crisis in Flint, Michigan, Chicago has distributed thousands of free lead testing kits to its residents in an attempt to figure out how bad the problem was. But once the results start coming in, the city buried them. Chicago hadn't updated the city-run website tracking the results of its own tests in more than 6 months until the Tribune started asking questions. Chicago's water consistently meets and exceeds the United States EPA standard for clean, high-quality drinking water. Megan Vittes, the spokesman for the city's water department, told Vice News. The Department of Water Management proactively uses corrosion control measures to ensure that it stays that way. We can't be held to a standard that we're not held to, Vittes added, referring to the Tribune using the FDA's benchmark for lead and bottled water in its report. We're a huge municipal water system. That's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. There's lead in your water. And your response to that is we can't be held to it. There's lead in your water. There's lead in your water. And you're telling him that you can't be held to a standard that, that nobody's holding you to. You have a standard to make sure that the people in your city are not drinking lead. How about that as a standard? There's no known safe level of lead in children's blood, according to the EPA and the Center for Disease Control. Ingesting the metal can cause irreversible brain damage and learning disabilities. And children who regularly drink water with more than 5 parts per million of lead content have been found to have lead levels in their blood, according to a recent study from the EPA scientists. Mayor Rahm Emmanuel, Democrat Mayor Rahm Emmanuel, has put forward an ambitious plan to replace 880 million miles of the city's aging water mains But the plan leaves the responsibility to replace lead service lines, the lines that connect mains to Chicagoans' actual taps, up to the homeowners. Until 1987, Chicago required that all service lines to city single-family homes and small apartment buildings be made of lead pipes. That's amazing. Chicago essentially caused this problem and now turning around saying, you guys can fix this problem providing you're willing to pay money to fix this problem. This same problem that we ourselves caused by having this take place with lead. And rattling those lead service lines during the construction to replace the water mains can actually make the problem worse. Construction near the lead pipe can shake loose the protective coating of the pipes meant to keep the lead from seeping into the tap water. Since 2011, when Rahm Emmanuel took office as the city's mayor, Chicago has borrowed more than $481 million for water projects, including $312 million to install new water mains, according to the Tribune. To replace the service lines will cost more. Still, other cities are footing the bill to ensure that their residents' water is lead-free. Boston, Denver, Detroit, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and St. Paul are all requiring that all municipal construction projects replace lead service pipes. Democrat Rahm Emmanuel. We're going to replace those lines, and we're going to help you out, providing that you have the cash saved up to actually pay for this to take place. Do you know that if most Americans got hit with a $500 bill, they wouldn't be able to afford it? And Rahm Emmanuel is saying, I understand that your kid is drinking water. I understand that Chicago had these things installed with lead. And we're going to try to fix this problem, providing you have the money to pay to make sure this problem is fixed. This should not take place. Please tell me you understand that this should not take place. And it should not be on the responsibility of the individual homeowner or the person in the apartment to deal with something that the city is supposed to be philosophically obliged to take care of. Do we provide clean water for the people in our country or not? Is that a yes or no? That's what it boils down to. What is your standard of living supposed to be in your country? And is that standard of living at the very least supplying clean water so our kids are not necessarily drinking lead contaminated water? This is a travesty. Rahm Emmanuel should resign from his job over this. It's very least from his behavior in regards to how he's supposed to do something about it. There are people drinking lead and have the response when you find out that your kid is drinking lead that, well, we can't really be held to a standard that we're not. How about a standard of not having my kids drinking lead? How about that? How about that? Democrat in office, getting nothing accomplished. But hey, the problem in this is Michelle Wolf. She's the problem. She's the culprit. If Michelle Wolf wasn't saying these things, nobody would know about it and nobody would complain. I'll leave it at that. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks everyone.